virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic. The Cemetery Committee is conducting this public meeting today, March 3rd, 2021 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1, 2020, amended May 7. This meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk. I ask all committee members, town staff, presenters activate their video and mute their mics unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand by hitting *9 on your phone, or select raise your hand option by your name in the list of participants. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We'll start with an attendance roll call. Please say, respond when I announce your name. Paul Cook's here. Andrea Solomon.
Here.
Jerry Susi.
Here.
Leo Carroll.
Here.
And Brian Davidson.
Here.
Okay. Now our agenda. Deed signing. Andrea's been taking care of that. Thank you, Andrea. And if you have any, Tish will let you know if there's anything to do in that department. The next proposed meeting is April 7, 2021. Is there a problem with that anywhere? All right. Nobody of legal age has a problem with that.
Paul, I think you're on mute.
Has everything I've said been on mute up till now?
No, I think I think after there was a little noise from one of the participants, we went to an all mute. And so after you started that.
That's very reassuring. Thank you, Brian. Sure. All right, so the next committee meeting is April 7th. Is anyone have any problem with that date? All right, so it's confirmed. And the approval of minutes, is there a motion to approve the minutes from February 3rd?
I motion to approve the minutes. Andrea
Solomon motions to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brian Davidson seconds. Let's have a roll call here again. Paul Cook, yay. Andrea Solomon.
Yay.
Jerry Susi.
Aye.
And Leo Carroll.
Yay.
And Brian Davidson.
Yay.
All right, so the minutes are approved. Now, our next topic is chair comments. A couple of things. First of all, we had planned to have the 18 Windmill Hill Road matter on the matter today. We placed it there, but it hasn't always been there, and there's been on again, off again matter with this. We'll come to it soon, but I wanted to use my chair comments to introduce it a little bit ahead of time. I want to begin by saying that if I have, because of my uncertainty on the matter, caused distress to anyone, Andrea in particular, also to our gentleman, Mr. Everett, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that I've exhibited some uncertainty on the matter. And I hope that will become clearer, and also the uncertainty will be clarified and become more certain as we go along. There are a couple of reasons why I was uncertain about putting it on and taking it off and not putting it on again. First, around the 11th of February, a second letter was forwarded to me by the Friends of Sleepy Hollow. The first letter from Melissa Sawfield was forwarded to me by them as well. And that was what really prompted me to put the issue on the agenda for the first time. I didn't know anything about it till January 25th when Kevin Plowsick forwarded it to me. And I then had asked Aaron to put it on the agenda. And Aaron didn't know anything about it until the 13th of January. Though I understand that the other brothers knew about it in October. So for some reason, the cemetery committee was late to the party. We didn't know about it very early. So anyway, the second letter was forwarded to me from the Friends of Sleepy Hollow. And it was a copy of a letter that had been sent to the zoning board concerned about the application for a special permit for 18 Windmill Hill Road property. And the letter had some, it was quite thorough, but it did have some debatable matters in it. The precise substance of the letter wasn't what got to me. It was rather that the author of the letter had been so forcefully defending the cemetery as an historic site in a way that I think I had failed to do when I addressed you last month when preface to the discussion of the property and all the things that followed. And I felt a little bit embarrassed, actually, that I had not been as forceful as the author of this letter even given some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses of her letter. Then the second thing, though I have to say that during the meeting, I was quite reassured by the property owner's assurances of softening the fence that he had built. And so then the second thing that happened was that the zoning board met on February the 11th. And in its aftermath, Mr. Everts, the property owner, wanted to get back with us to confirm his offer to soften the fence line with plantings and so forth. And Andrea Solomon informed me of this and asked me to put it on the agenda for today. And I agreed at the time to do it and asked Aaron to put it on. And I decided shortly thereafter, because I was still thinking about this letter that had been forwarded to me by Kevin Plowsick, that I had not looked into this matter enough. The letter to Ms. Frisella Lee's letter convicted me that I had not looked into it enough, even though some of her remarks may have been, as I say, debatable. So I drafted a letter to send to you all in which I proposed to, it was a draft to a letter I proposed to send to the zoning board stating that I was not certain that Mr. Everett's plans and the well-being of the cemetery were incompatible, but that I was concerned that we'd look into the matter more. And I drafted it and I sent it to Aaron. I thought we would do it. And then Aaron mentioned to me that he thought we'd already been over this matter. And then I thought about it again and I decided not to do that. At the same time, I felt that going ahead to confirm the plantings that Mr. Everett had been willing to make and that I had told Andrea that I would put on the agenda would be to foreclose any possibility or many possibilities of further discussion on the matter. So I was reluctant to invite us to confirm in a more formal way his generous offer from last month. I was interested in putting it off and asking the committee to do some more study and then discuss it in April. So that's what I intended to do. And I sent an email at that time to the zoning board asking when their deadline was. They obviously wanted to move ahead on the matter. And I also said that there was some feeling at the committee that we hadn't discussed it enough. Now, that's what I was thinking at the time. I don't believe that the committee demonstrated a lot of uncertainty, but I somehow remember that there was at least not a lot of enthusiasm, but some willingness to say, look, we're grateful for what he's doing, and there's nothing we can do about it anyway because property rights, and it's not a historic, it's not in a historic zone. So I somehow interpreted that as something that would be open to more discussion. And I certainly felt that way. And then the letter that I'd gotten from this citizen made me think that there were people out there. And then I went to actually to the zoning board website and read a number of letters that were posted there and felt that there was some more that could be said in defense of the cemetery that might make a difference. So that was the second thing that made me decide to pull the thing off the agenda. But it also, in writing that letter to the zoning board, it was then came into the hands of Mr. Everts and also into Andrea's hand. And they were both quite upset because it was a change that they weren't expecting and that they didn't think was the way to go. And so I am sorry. It was not my wish to distress or offend. And I hope that perhaps by the end of our meeting today, things will be clarified. But I do apologize to you, Andrea, and to Mr. Everts for having been, what's the word, uncertain about the way to go. I think, though, Andrea, you and I have been on this cemetery committee for 6 years, and we've worked together a lot. And I think I've generally not behaved in an uncertain way. I've tried to do things in a process that was orderly, and but this thing caught me by surprise. I just have to confess, maybe the circumstances down here being away from Concord, and the past month we've had some excitement down here. I just sort of was unprepared in some ways. And so that's why I've been hesitant and uncertain about what to do. It's on the agenda again today. So the reason, also the final reason, was because I got a phone call from Aaron just the other morning saying there's new information is that the engineering department has come up with a report on the stormwater to do with that property, and the committee should address that. So I said, okay, let's put it back on the agenda. So we did. Now there's one other thing I want to use my chair comments to do, and it's to say something about a project that took a long time. Andrea and I and the whole committee has been involved. Even the newest members have had something to do with it. And that began in 2015 when another gentleman came to us wanting to build he already had a really well-known architect. He had the plans already done, and he and the architect came to the meeting, and he wanted to buy a mausoleum site next to the Pope tomb. Well, nobody had bought a site in the Concord Cemetery since 1930, and we didn't know what to do. There was no idea what to do about the matter. So we began to work on it, and the more we worked on it, the more we find we were concerned about public objections. We decided there needed to be a redo of the master plan to put it in context so that the public could understand why we wanted to do this. And two of our members, including Andrea, did quite a job putting that new master plan together. It took a long time. Then after that, we felt we needed to look into what other cemeteries were doing with mausoleums. That took a long time. Then it was thought that we had to have a public meeting bigger than this venue where maybe a dozen of us could meet, or bigger than the venue of the room that we had over there in the Public Works Department, something in the town hall. So it took months to plan that and prepare for that. And finally, we had a public meeting to discuss whether or not it would be a good idea to sell mausoleum plots. That was done, and then we got a new cemetery supervisor. Aaron McCloskey came on board, and we continued to work on the matter until finally, last December, 5 years after the thing began, we were able to say we can put mausoleums up for sale in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And I bring this up, and by the way, this appeared just a week ago in the Concord Journal. It's a notice that finally, it says here, mausoleums available in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. It took 5 years of effort on our part to make that possible. And I only bring this up because the cemetery, we took so much trouble because the cemetery is a very sensitive spot. It is one of the most historic sites in Concord, and Concord is one of the most historic towns in the whole country. And so we are given the privilege of defending and protecting an historic site, one of the most historic sites in our town, in one of the most historic towns in the United States. And so we took great care, even with putting up, selling new mausoleum sites. And so in this matter, a new matter of somewhat different tenor, but still affecting the cemetery, I felt demanded a little more attention and time than we have given it. So with no further ado, I will now end my chair comments and ask Aaron to proceed with his Public Works staff report.
Paul. Good evening, everyone. Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent, Concord Public Works. So during the month of February, we had 2 cremation burials at Sleepy Hollow. No lots were sold. It was kind of, I guess, quiet on that end of operations. But very busy as far as snow plowing, snow removal goes. We had a number of storms here in Concord. And Tish and some of the Highway and Grounds crew that worked with her were very busy trying to get that open as quickly as possible after the storm. So I commend Tish on the great effort and attention to detail that was taken with clearing the snow and opening the cemetery up and making it safe for any visitors to the cemetery in the last month. So thank you for that, Tish. Other than that, operations, it was nothing too out of the ordinary or else to note. We did a little bit. We started doing some tree work again here recently, just some pruning in some areas of the cemetery that we can get to as weather is allowed. And excited for hopefully a turn in the weather here soon and get going with some spring maintenance in the cemetery. So, I don't know, Tish, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Oh, I'm just hopeful that the snow is gone by next week. That would be good. It's my plan anyway.
So thanks, Tish. That's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Tish. Now we go to D3, Windmill Hill Road proposed project discussion. I'd like to ask Aaron to lead us off here because you prompted this, actually putting it back on the agenda by the matter to do with the engineering report.
Thank you, Paul. So there was, since the last meeting, we did get some additional information that, so as Paul mentioned earlier, Public Works became kind of aware of the project and that, requested our input or comment and comment from the committee in mid-January. At that point, 2 divisions of Public Works were kind of engaged at Highway and Grounds and also engineering. Joining us this evening is Justin Richardson, the Assistant Town Engineer for Concord Public Works. And engineering's role was to kind of look at stormwater and do, comment on the plans that they were provided by the applicant, primarily for the ZBA, not for the cemetery committee. But I felt that it was appropriate to kind of notify the cemetery committee that there was an additional kind of engineering assessment being done within Public Works to look at the site, and wanted to share some of that information with the committee. So I don't know, Justin, if you can give a little bit of brief overview of your assessment and a review of the plans and any comments that I know that Justin and the engineering department, town engineer, will be providing an official letter, I believe, to the ZBA on their comments. But if you could give a little bit of a general overview in case folks have heard about that, and elaborate.
Sure, Aaron, and members of the committee. My first time here, so nice to meet all of you. So basically, the ZBA requested that the engineering division review a set of plans that were submitted for this project. Basically, I reviewed, there was a few series of plans that were submitted to the ZBA. So the initial plans we reviewed and had some initial comments to basically just local Public Works. And then some other plans were submitted a little later to the zoning board, which we also reviewed. And yesterday we had a meeting with the resident on site to kind of address some of engineering's concerns related to stormwater. Currently on site, there's an existing berm that basically runs up against the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, but the proposed development is going to go past that area where the berm is. So we requested the applicant to revise his plan to extend that berm along the edge of the interior of his property along the fence line to prevent any stormwater runoff from, basically coming into the cemetery property. And he actually submitted that plan earlier today, and I've taken a look at it, and it looks good. He has implemented the berm as requested. So as far as the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery is concerned, there's no stormwater that's going to enter from his property. So that's essentially my assessment.
Thank you, Justin. appreciate that. So,
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
So Paul, that kind of addresses what the comment that I had brought to you a couple of days ago. I think it was on Monday. I kind of became aware there was going to be providing that comment. Met with Justin. Justin and I, as you mentioned, met with the applicant on site yesterday to look at the site, look at Sleepy Hollow, look at the property. So appreciate that the applicant was very quick to turn around the plans as requested. We did notify them that there was going to be this meeting. And happy that we were able to get that review done beforehand. That's all I really had to, I don't know, turn it back over to you, Paul.
Okay.
Questions?
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Justin. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Justin Richardson? Thanks, Justin. All right. So I wanted to say a few things, and then we can open it up to other committee members and then to public discussion. I think that Mr. Everts has shown himself to be very willing to work with the cemetery committee, but I want to put his offer to work with us to soften the fence and so on in what I feel is a broader context. The property owner has created a plan to make maximum use of his property, siting his new house at the very highest spot, building a driveway that will go along the entire length of the new fence. And he's been interested in showing the cemetery committee and the zoning board that he's willing to soften the impact of his plan. And he has understandably been interested in sticking to that plan to build a new home on his property, which itself, in terms of where it was sited, I feel does not demonstrate maximum sensitivity to a very sensitive spot. What he's doing is building a very tall building on the highest elevation of that property. It's at the top of a hill overlooking an historic site of national importance. It doesn't seem to me that this house was designed with the cemetery in mind. The message sent by siting it there is rather that the house will certainly be appealing as a property to live in. And also by siting it there, it will maximize, I believe, that house's value in the future. But at the same time, it maximizes the house's impact on the cemetery. I want to commend Mr. Everts for his efforts to soften the plan that he has chosen. But still, that house, once it's finished, will tower over the cemetery. Even though the property owner, at considerable expense to himself, has consented to lessen its height by 3 feet in an effort to have his plan approved. I did attend by recording the zoning board meeting after it had taken place. I got a hold of the recording and listened to it. And in listening to that, I learned from hearing what different people had to say, including members of the zoning board, and looking at drawings of elevations and so forth, that the new house is to be built on ground that is 99 to 103 feet above sea level, at least 6 feet higher than the height of the original house, which was sited at 93 feet above sea level. And then the ridge, or the top of the new house that's planned, will be some 30 feet higher. I want to remind the cemetery committee that the original house on this site, which was built in 1939, was built on the western end of the property, on the lowest elevation of that property, so that it is much less visible from the cemetery. If it was built there intentionally to lessen its impact on the cemetery, that would have been nice. I don't know why it was built there, but it is built on the least obtrusive spot on that property. Mr. Everts plans to put in trees along the north side of the fence that he has built, I think are excellent. His plans call for trees to be planted that are going to be from 8 to 12 feet high. The top of the house will be more than 30 feet above the grade where those trees are placed. So that even planting even 10 years of growth it will take at least, I think, 10 years of growth before they are able to become a full screen. But more to the point is, what about the next owner of that property? Mr. Everts has demonstrated sensitivity and respect for the cemetery. But if he should sell his developed property in a few years, what if the new owner wishes to take down some of those trees to gain a better view or from some other reason. We have no way to prohibit that. If some future owner prefers a view from the windows of the second story, which faces south, overlooking the cemetery, to a view of the trees that are planted along the front that block that view, there is nothing to stop him from taking down parts of that fence and taking down some of those trees so that the occupants may have an unobstructed view to the south. Or what if some later owner takes down part of that fence so that cars using that very long driveway, which goes all along that fence, cars taking that driveway would then come into view from the cemetery grounds. And then what if whatever activities that are going on that property at that future time, in terms of sight and sound, drift down to Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, and those who are enjoying the quiet and the mood that such a place can often promote? Would not such sights and sounds affect the cemetery in a significant and negative way? So I want to say that I am glad that this property owner has taken steps, serious steps, to moderate and soften his plans, including lowering the ridge 3 feet. But I wonder if it's enough. It seems to me that it is our responsibility on the cemetery committee to indicate to the zoning board, who only has the right to make a decision, because the cemetery, though it is a historic site, none of the abutters are in a historic district. And so none of them are bound in any way to moderate their full rights as property owners, even though they abut a very important, very sensitive site. So it seems to me that it is our responsibility to indicate to the zoning board that we are concerned that the house plan for 18 Windmill Hill Road is just too tall and situated too intrusively in view of the historic importance of the cemetery. I want to say again that Mr. Everts has shown great respect for the cemetery, but I would say he has not necessarily demonstrated love for it. You may say, well, how can you be sure that he doesn't love it? My answer is that where a man has spent his money and put his treasure, that's where you'll find his heart. He has taken care of the cemetery's concerns out of respect for the cemetery. But his heart, it seems to me, is where his greatest amount of treasure is, and that is in that house and that property. And it is his property, and he has a right to set his heart where he wishes to, and to build accordingly. And he has asked the zoning board to give him a special permit to do so. But to remind us that in this case, as protectors of the cemetery, by being on this committee, our status need not only be to respect the cemetery, as Mr. Everts is willing to do, but in some greater sense, our duty is to love it, or at least approach it. As if there's no one in the town who's got that responsibility, it's us. And that means protecting it from trouble that I think this project will lead to. It is thus my hope that the zoning board might deny the special permit, because this house is just too high, too prominent, too dominating, in a context where more sensitivity is what love for the historical tenor of the cemetery and the town of Concord calls for. I realize that the committee is made up of 5 individuals, not just the chair, and that I'm just one of 5. And so I know that what I've just said has no intrinsic power to carry the day, but that's my heart on the matter, and I felt I needed to deliver it before any further confirmation of gifts to the cemetery is contemplated. So now I would like to leave it open to other members of the cemetery committee to speak their minds.
Yes, I'd like to clarify a couple things. So when we concluded our last meeting, one of the last questions I asked at that meeting was, do you think we should write a letter to the zoning board as a committee to tell them that we've at least discussed it, even if we've come to no decision or conclusion or consensus? And the committee as a whole said, no, we don't want to confuse the issue or muddy the waters. So we didn't respond at all. So I just left it at that. And then Paul, on February 11th, which is the day of the zoning board meeting, you had forwarded to me a couple of things. One of them, I think, was the letter by Miss Frizella Lee. And I was concerned with some of the assumptions she made, then I attended the zoning board meeting. So I know some of the assumptions in her letter are false and have been taken care of, or at least they have been considered, I should say, by the zoning board. And then I was also concerned because in the thread of the letter or the email that you had forwarded to me, there's a lot of confusion about who's the friends of the cemetery are and who the cemetery committee is. And in fact, almost everyone, Miss Saalfield and Miss Frizella Lee, who were worried about this building, had in fact contacted the friends of the cemetery, not the cemetery committee. So I was a little worried as to who was going to be at this meeting and if the zoning board even knew the difference between the friends of the cemetery and the cemetery committee. Now, the friends, of course, should show up and say what they want, and I adore our relationship with them. But I was just a little concerned that as a committee, we weren't going to be there to say, well, we're the ones who might have a little more information about what could be done to soften or mitigate the fence or other things. So I wrote a letter to the zoning board. I stated in the first sentence of the letter that I was on the committee, but I was writing as a private citizen. And then I just gave my own opinion, in which everything I said, I feel this is my experience. I described some of what happened in my neighborhood and what I liked about it. And then I got a few other emails from the committee, and I would say that I'm not upset about the changing of the agenda. I was confused because it was on, then it was off, then it was on, and I wasn't getting filled in necessarily on what the decisions were. And my only point in reaching out to you, Paul, to put it on the agenda again for this month was because in attending the zoning board meeting, I knew that they asked Mr. Everts to check back with us about plantings around the fence. Now, I didn't take it upon myself to address you about that, but when Mr. Everts emailed me to say, per the zoning board request, can I meet with you guys? That's when I forwarded it to you, and that's when you and Aaron said, let's put it on the agenda. Then it was off the agenda. Now it's back on the agenda. And I know there was a lot of emails in between. But I think the rest of our committee is at a bit of a disadvantage because at one point when this was on our agenda, Paul, you had written out a draft of a letter that you thought our committee might want to send. And you also, in a different document, were going to include the links to the public page of the zoning board. And I don't think those were sent to our committee. So I'm not sure if the rest of our committee has seen all the documents, letters, and supporting materials that would be helpful for them. So I'm not sure how much they know.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrea. When I decided not to send the draft, I decided not to send anything, including the supporting materials. In hindsight, perhaps it would have been better to have gone ahead and done that. But as I said, I am guilty of being uncertain about what to do. I was sort of taken by surprise. And so sometimes when you're uncertain, the best thing is not to do anything. Not always, but sometimes. And that's what I did. I didn't do anything. And then other circumstances came along, so here we are. But no, I certainly think that not the draft of the letter, I think is moot, but certainly the connection, I think I would encourage, it's not that hard to do, to go to the zoning board, Concord, Mass Zoning Board of Appeals, and everything regarding the 18 Windmill Hill Road issue is right there. Drawings, photos, letters supporting it and contesting it. It's all there, quite a lot. So Brian and Leo and Jerry, I regret that Andrea's quite right, you're sort of in the dark here, and I apologize for that. But I do want to urge you to go, and you can also listen to the entire zoning board meeting. I have a link I could send you. I did do that, and it was helpful. So, all right.
Well, I did want to point out that the reason why this project is even before the zoning board is because it exceeds the floor area ratio. And they have to approve that, but it's not because of the height of the structure, and it's not because of where it's placed on that land. So I just want to point out that if Mr. Everts, and at some point they will decide to sell the property or the property will be sold, if they don't do anything and they sell the property and that property is bought by a builder or by someone who's just going to take everything down off that, they can build a fairly large, fairly tall structure and never have to go before the zoning board. And it will be built before we know it, and no one will have a say in it at all. So the fact that we have a neighbor right now, Mr. Everts, who is willing to work with that, who has already agreed to lower the structure by 3 feet, I think is a bonus, because I shudder to think what would go there if a builder bought that property. I have seen what has happened to properties around Concord where that has happened. There's one right around the corner from me that's one of the ugliest houses I've ever seen, and it will go for a lot of money, and that builder will make himself a tidy little profit, and no one can say anything about it. So that's something to consider too.
Mhm. Yeah, you're quite right, Andrea. The cemetery is essentially, even as important as it is, and as important as Concord is as an historic town, the cemetery is pretty defenseless right now. And it is true that if for some reason the zoning board tells Mr. Everts that he can't, they kill his desire for a special permit, he can say, all right, now I'll just tear down the old house and build that very house that you're mentioning that could be built there, Andrea. Which is why, I mean, just across the street where my house is on Bedford Court, it's an historic zone. And I can't even put an awning on the front porch of my house without going to the historic, and they say no, because they don't want to change the face. So I think that probably whoever's going to be chair next, Brian or Leo or Jerry, after Andrea and I are gone, I would say a top issue, and I mentioned this to Aaron the other day, is you have to go to the town meeting and create a historic zone, which includes all the abutters. That's the only way to protect the cemetery, because just what Andrea has said is very able to happen.
I would also say too that I mean, unfortunately right now that property isn't in a historic zone. And I do think we have to not only put ourselves in the position of people visiting Sleepy Hollow, but put ourselves in the position of homeowners who now own that property and have otherwise followed all the steps that the zoning board has asked them to take. Now, I don't know why the zoning board didn't notify us about this project in September when they first got the plan. But I think it's important to be cognizant that, you know, they have been dealing with this a lot longer than we have. And to appreciate that patience and willingness to show up at every meeting they've been asked to show up at, to meet separately with both us and the zoning board, and then continue to make change after change after change that's been asked of them.
No, I take nothing away from the perseverance and patience of Mr. Everts. I salute it. My only point is that we also have a responsibility to, when all is said and done, we are the people in the town of Concord who have given we're the first responders, so to speak, on the well-being of the cemetery. And that's where I have to dig my spade. Other members want to add to what Andrea said, or add anything?
Just wondering that, not knowing all the correspondence, but did we have a historical commission in town. Did they send a letter opposing the creation of this house in this area that you guys are aware of?
Melissa Sawfield who is here, is the chair of the historical commission. She wrote a letter. I don't know if it was for her commission or in her own name, but she wrote a letter to, and this is what Andrea's concern was. She didn't realize that we're the folks she should write. I mean, she wrote a letter, I think it was actually to the zoning board, but she sent a copy of it to Jerry, to Kevin Plozek, the chair of the president of the Friends. She didn't send it to me because she didn't know we existed, or she didn't realize that we're the ones in charge. So Kevin, who knows you know, who's been a great friend to the cemetery committee and done great work in doing, and I see that Priscilla is here from the Friends, and nice to see you, Priscilla. He forwarded it to me, and that's the first, anyway, that's, I forgot what was the original question, Brian? Oh yes, do they know? Well, you have to ask.
I see Melissa has her hands up, Paul.
Mr. Solis, yeah.
Can I speak?
Ms. Sawfield, oh yes, please go ahead.
A couple things. I wrote to the Friends because I wanted an advocate on behalf of the cemetery. I assumed that the cemetery committee was well aware of this issue. I had no way of knowing. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I originally thought, well, I'll write to the advocacy group. The historical commission had not known about this before the last meeting that we had. And they didn't take it up at our meeting in February. I wrote for myself because I was very concerned. And again, I wrote to Kevin because he's the president of the Friends, which I would assume would be an advocacy group. And I participated in or attended your meeting because I wanted to hear what you had to say. And I was disturbed just to understand that you weren't aware of this project. Because of course, I thought you knew all about it.
Yeah, we didn't.
I have a question for Ms. Southfield, actually. You had mentioned at our last meeting that at some point you owned a house and you had put up a very tall fence.
Yeah.
That your neighbors, I don't think your neighbors.
The neighbors nobody had any objection. The HDC, I was living in an historic district and I had to go before the HDC.
And were you able to build your fence?
Yes, I was.
And did you have to change it or modify it?
Well, I made it I had to get it approved by what the HDC said. I also had a lot of trees in front of it too, so that's why I'm saying I can appreciate why the Everts want their fence. I'm not talking, my concern was really about the impact of the fence. And when at the last meeting, Mr. Ebert said, well, we would consider some plantings on both sides to mitigate the wall aspect of the fence. I thought that seemed like a very reasonable and very gracious offer on his part. I don't know where that stands. The other thought I had is if he could, modify the fence by, my term was crenellated, so he sets it back so it isn't just one monolithic wall like the Great Wall of China. I mean, I find it a very unattractive fence because it's so long.
I've seen it. It's just unbelievable.
So again, I was just trying to appeal to the Everts themselves to think, what could they do to that fence to mitigate its rather ominous, to me, looming over a really historic part of the cemetery.
It's not the really historic part, by the way.
Mm. Well, I mean, it's an important part. Regardless of where it is, it may not be Author's Ridge. It is still Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. There, for the families whose loved ones are buried there, it's very important. And I think in my opinion, you take the whole Sleepy Hollow Cemetery as an important historical, not only burying place, but artifact for the town of Concord.
Thank you, Ms. Sawfield. Other members of the committee, Brian, go ahead.
Well, I don't know much about the zoning board, so forgive me, but one of the concerns I heard, it sounds like the Everts are, good citizens of Concord, but there is a fear that, when the time comes and they do sell, that future owners may not have that same zeal to continue the protections of allowing, ivy to grow up over the fence, to place trees in front of the fence. And does the ZBA, do they write in orders that would then, require that? So no. So I see Andrea shaking her head. She sounds like she has some experience in the area, but so we can't have them put into the order if it's allowed that it's that screening is maintained.
It's allowed by right.
Uh,
I think that's Mr. Everts responding.
Mr.
You're
Everts.
unmuted, Mr. Everts.
Mr. Everts, would you like?
You want me to talk?
Yes, if you would like to respond to Mr. Davidson, please do.
Well, listen, first of all, Mr. Cook, I would like to apologize for being so exasperated in the letter that I sent you. But I felt it was very important for me to lay out our position on all of the different issues, which I tried to do as concisely as possible. And, as far as the fence is concerned, as I explained in my letter to you, the fence looks worse now than it's ever going to look. It was installed in November. It's been too cold for the, mold and bacteria and, whatever lichen, to colonize on the fence. So it has been also bleached by the sun. The fence will turn gray, and the fence will have a lot of vegetation growing around it. And I have, offered to help finance the installation of some trees, which can be designed by your committee, which will make it so that when people are looking up the hill in certain spots, you really won't be able to see it that well. And honestly, I think that the fence is good for the cemetery because the people in the cemetery aren't listening to my family, and my family don't have to listen to the people in the cemetery. Good fences make good neighbors. And, I just honestly, I think that by right, we can build the fence. By right, we can do that. It does not require a permit. We are not in the historic district. I'm trying to bend over backwards to work with you guys. To tell you the truth, I am very upset about the fact that we have changed the pitch of the roof because we're trying to achieve what is called the modern farmhouse look. And when you ask us to change the pitch of the roof, it no longer looks like a modern farmhouse. I mean, we're just trying to go for an architectural style, and we're trying to maintain those proportions. And, we're actually not able to do that. And I'm willing to, take that on the chin. And I'm willing to pay for the design fees to reconfigure the entire house. But my problem is that I feel like I am continually being poked by a sharp stick. And it's just really becoming annoying. We have the right to do these things. We are trying to work with you as best as we can. We've offered to do all of the things that the ZBA has suggested that we try to do. And, again, we are just trying to be reasonable. And as Andrea pointed out, if we wanted to, we could tear down our house and we could build a honkin' McMansion right up on top of the hill. And no one would be able to say one word about it. And I don't want to do that. And I don't think the cemetery wants us to do that either. And, this is not a threat. I'm just saying that if somebody else were to buy the property, as Andrea has pointed out, a huge house could be built there. And so here I am trying to work with you guys. No one's going to build, tear the house down after we're done. And I don't think anybody's going to want to cut the trees down either, because anybody who buys that house is going to want it for the privacy that it offers. It is very, very private. And when the trees are grown up along the fence, you really won't be able to see the house, and it'll be very private, and it's got a southern exposure. So, why would anybody want to cut down the trees? I just, I don't think that's valid.
I would just like
I
to
guess that's all I
add
have
that,
to say. Excuse me?
I would like to add that the way the rules are now in the town, in that district that Mr. Everts lives in, he really can build any fence he wants, whether we like it or not, or the people of the town like it or not. So that the fence isn't going anywhere right now. But also, whatever you're afraid of happening in the future with future owners, that onus shouldn't be on the present owners. We have town laws that we have to abide by. The zoning board has its rules that it requires everyone to abide by. But again, I will say this again and again, there are many huge imposing houses you can build there that are within all the laws and setbacks and roof lines and floor area ratios that you can imagine, and it can be huge and imposing and no board will ever have to approve it. So
Thank you.
that, I just think that's really important.
I know, and that,
to
and
know.
you said that, and so has Mr. Everts. So perhaps one of the other board members, if anyone else has something to say on the matter? Jerry.
Well, yeah, I guess from my perspective, you're right. I haven't been in the loop since on any of this since the last meeting. You know, my position at the last meeting was that, you know, I did not see a problem. I've since been by there a number of times. I've seen the fence. I don't envision a problem. I don't see this as abrogating our responsibility or our stewardship of this important asset. And so I guess, and at this point, I'm unclear on what it is I'm being asked to consider.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
I thought we were all set.
Yeah,
I guess is my,
I know, Jerry. Well, I'll tell you, the last thing I said is the fact is that if Mr. Everts had not asked for a special permit, he could do precisely the thing that Andrea and Mr. Everts have told us he could do. He could build a 35-foot house on the highest part of the land, as long as he tore down that other house. But he doesn't want to tear down the other house. He needs a permit to have a bigger space there. And so because of that, we have been given the opportunity to weigh in with the zoning board. We do not have final say, but having listened to the zoning board's meeting from last time, I think the zoning board would be willing to listen to us if we had some consensus about this being a problem. If we don't, as a body, then I think our power is gone. This is an issue of the tension between private property rights and public concerns. And this is why there is such a thing as zoning. This is why you don't build a hospital next to a factory, why you don't allow commercial building inside a residential neighborhood, because certain points of property rights are limited by the public concerns. Now, and that's also the case of historic concerns. Now, some towns don't give a hoot about that. Like the city I'm living in right now, Houston, Texas is the biggest city in the country with no zoning. And you can have a strip club next to a church, right? And you can't say anything about it. The guy who owns the strip club can say to the pastor, tough luck, buddy. So that's how it can be. But in most places, you have zoning laws, or in this case, historic districts, which try to protect. The thing about Concord is it's a unique place. I think there's no other town in the Commonwealth like it, and perhaps none in New England. It's got literary history, it's got cultural history, it's got military history, it's got lots of stuff going on. And this is the third most popular site for tourists to visit. It is a very sensitive spot, and if we have any opportunity to defend it, I think we should. And my request, this is my point, Jerry. The last thing I said is, it's my hope that the zoning board would deny the special permit to Mr. Everts, because this house is just, I'm not talking about the fence, I'm talking about the house. The fence, enough has been said about it. I'm not a fan of the fence, but I'm talking about the house. The house is going to tower over that space, even if he takes it down 3 feet. And so and in the meantime, as far as future dangers, I want to encourage whoever's going to be chair after I'm gone and Andrea's gone, which will be this year, to really do what you can. And I've talked to Aaron about it. It's not going to be easy, because the abutters are not going to be happy about being in a historic district. They won't be. But it's the only way to protect the cemetery is if you have to go to the town meeting, and it's going to be very many, it took 5 years to get 5 little mausoleum plots in the cemetery. It's going to take a long time, maybe 5 years if you try it, if you persist. I have been a persistent guy, I normally am. If you persist, you may be able to get a historic district around the cemetery and protect it from somebody building the McMansion that has been mentioned.
Well, I think that's another thing to weigh, though, is that when you buy a property that's not in a historic district and you make plans to improve or enhance or build on your property, then, I mean, we're asking Mr. Everts to then, would we ask the zoning board to pretend like it is in a historic district, which it isn't?
No,
And-
Andrea, no. We're not asking the zoning, but Mr. Everts has a very specific request of them. He has a specific plan that he has put a lot of time and money and energy into. He and his architects have an idea what they want to do, and it includes requesting a special permit to do that. And if they didn't want to do that, if he wanted to do it in a different way and didn't want to keep that other house, he could do the very thing he suggested and that you mentioned. He could build that McMansion on top of that hill. The only reason we have anything to say about this is because he hasn't done that. And I want to give him credit for doing that, but I don't want to excuse, I don't want to lay over and roll over and ignore the fact that we have the potential to protect the cemetery by asking the zoning board not to give him the special permit.
Mr. Everts, could I ask you, you've been before the zoning board since like September, so you've been working with them and making plans and changes and doing what they've asked. Was it your impression that the last request they made of you at their February 11th meeting was that you lower the roof line and work with the cemetery committee about mitigating the fence, and that they were going to approve your plans if you did that?
Yes, that was the impression that I had.
Okay.
And that's why I went ahead and, got the ball rolling on lowering the ridge. So, I just.
So you've been waiting for 5 or 6 months for this to happen. Now it's going to happen. Now you think it's going to happen, but now
Right. And that's why I was so exasperated over it.
And that's frustrating. And I think that's very understandable.
And I think that if you look at all of the different points in the letter that I submitted, I think that you'll find an answer to all of the different issues that we're talking about. 1, the fence does not require a permit. 2, we are not in the historic district. 3, we're trying to work with you guys. And 4, we're trying to be good neighbors by continuing to finance things like removing the dead trees and installing new trees. And we'd like to help with the irrigation of those trees as well. And I also made a point that the pedestrian roadway below our house parallels Route 62. So I don't feel like, the quiet calm of the Melville Brothers Memorial is, part of that part of the cemetery. I mean, I realize that it's important, but I also don't think that it is the most important area. And there are other areas of the cemetery where people have hockey rinks set up with lights. There's other parts of the cemetery. There's a huge blue house that is very close to where we are and is presently being screened by hemlocks that are in decline. Okay, so, there's an example of a giant house that's about 20 feet off of the property line with no protection whatsoever. So, don't get me started.
Yeah, there is I think there's a bit of misinformation about your driveway. There is an embankment, right? So your driveway is actually lower than the fence line so that people driving or walking up that driveway, the traffic lights will not be seen from the cemetery at all.
For
Is
sure.
that right?
The lights will be below the berm for most of the way. When you're up at the very top, our plan is to have the uh-oh hedge, which is similar to the hedge that we have on the lower part of our driveway, which we installed, which is basically a U hedge that, prevents any lights from coming in. And then we also have our neighbor who was part of the ZBA meeting, who we installed a bunch of arborvitaes and, those kinds of things.
I'd like to just jump in here, Mr. Eberts.
Excuse
Does
me?
anyone else from the committee have any questions for Mr. Eberts? Does anybody have any suggestion about what to do?
Yeah, Paul, this is Leo.
Elio?
My thoughts on this are that I personally like to see things stay the same there, and but you can't stand in the way of change if it's all done using the correct mechanisms. So if there is no laws to say he can't do this, if he's got his permits and he's following them, this is the United States. That's the way it works. If we were afraid of this, or the town was afraid of this happening in the past, then in the past they should have made a law or regulation to stop it. But at this point, I don't think there's anything you can do about it. It's the Zoning Board of Appeals that makes this decision, not us.
You're quite right, but the zoning board wants Mr. Eberts to report to them that we are in agreement and we're with him. And so
I just want to correct that. They wanted him to work with us on plantings around the fence. They are not asking him to come to us for agreement about the structure.
I understand that, Andrew,
that's an important point.
I attended that meeting too. I listened to the whole meeting, and
yes, and in the meeting is the reason why I know that Ms. Frizella Lee's complaint about his driveway isn't complete, is a bit exaggerated, is because I attended that meeting, and in that meeting he explained the change that he had made to that.
Yes, of course. I admitted several times, Mr. Sully doesn't have all of her facts quite the way they could be. The main point that I approved of was that she was a forceful defendant of the cemetery as an historic site, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Now, I know, Leo, that I have every respect for property rights, and you fought to protect them. I have every respect for you, and I think you know that. I don't think there's anybody who knows that cemetery as well as you do. And that's why I'm delighted that I was able to twist your arm enough to get you to join the cemetery committee. I'm delighted that you're on board. We're not asking the zoning board to change the law or anything. We're not trying to, Mr. Eberts has every right to do what he wants on his property, but he has asked the zoning board for a specific special permit, and they are waiting. I heard their discussion. They want to know whether the cemetery committee has any problem with it. And if we don't, then, and they were a little bit worried about the building, not a little, they were quite concerned about the building being too tall. And they wanted him to lower, they told him that they would be, what's the word? They would take as a very positive step, his lowering the height a few feet, 3 feet, something like that. And he has done that, because he wants this plan to be executed. The only thing that's still really still a problem is that the cemetery committee has not, for a better word, weighed in a positive way. And the way we would do that would be to consent to his softening the fence, planting trees. These are sorts of things. And if we are satisfied with his gifts, his offers, his presence to the cemetery, and say so, then the zoning board will go ahead and give him the special permit. On the other hand, if we say that these are very nice, these are very respectful, but they don't really solve the problem of this house being a sort of maximal offense, the maximum amount of offense a house could be toward the cemetery, which I believe it is. The point is, we have been given as a gift a temporary, in this case, the opportunity to say to the cemetery, to the zoning board, that we think the house is too big. And I'm talking about the fence, and it's going to loom over the cemetery in spite of the trees. And then also that in the future, who's to stop the changes? So we do, we have the right to sort of stand in the way of change and say, wait, stand in the way and say, no, we do it without breaking any laws, because he wants a special permit. And if we want to stand up for the cemetery, I don't know, I don't want to stand up against Mr. Evers. He has every right to do what he wants, and I respect what he's doing. But we have our responsibility here too, and that is to take care of the cemetery. So it's not that he doesn't. It's not that we're trying to destroy his rights. We're trying to take advantage of his request for a special permit by saying we are not on board. I can see that in general the cemetery committee doesn't agree with me, and that's okay, because I at least feel like I've had a chance to bare my soul on the matter. And so if, we've had votes before where it was 4-1 and one of us stood against it. Brian, not too long ago, was at the end, the lone man out on a 4-1 vote. So if it comes to a vote, if you want to do such a thing as that, and it's leaning, it could be 3-2 or 4-1, but there's definitely going to be 4-1 because I'm dead set against what he's doing.
Mr. Cook and other members of the public.
Not because I'm against rights either. Okay, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, could you perhaps have Ms. Priscilla Lee speak, because she had major input to the ZBA previously?
Actually, I think Mr. Susi had something to add. Jerry,
Jerry, you go ahead first, and then Ms. Priscilla Lee, by all means.
Well, okay. In regards to, my question, what are we here for? You came prepared with a letter, which you read, and the closing of the letter says, we oppose this, or we ask that you turn them down. I forget the exact wording. So do you want to offer as a motion that we accept, that we sign on your letter and have a vote and then take it from there?
You haven't seen this wasn't even my letter. These are just my notes. I wanted to, what my original hope was to say today, let's study this and then have it meet again in April. Of course, this was very distressing, and I can understand why, to Mr. Everett, because he's got an architect and a builder, and he wants to get moving. And I told him, look, I see your frustration. I didn't find out about this thing till January 25th. He thought I knew about it in October. For some reason, we were behind. We got left out on this matter, and so. But now we're being asked, in as many words, for our opinion. Not that it's going to carry the day, but it does seem to have some weight with the zoning board. I don't want to ask you to vote on a letter that you haven't even seen. That I've only given you the notes of it. I think you know where I stand more or less on the matter. But the motion is to do, yes, if there were to be a motion on where do we stand on the house and the whole development of the issue as defenders of the cemetery. Jerry, you want to add anything or respond or?
No, I guess, no.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a very provocative suggestion. We could call it a motion. I guess I know Mr. Everett's impatient, but we're new to we're late to the party, and it's sort of hard to, I am uncertain. He's got a lot of time and money invested in this. I don't want to railroad anybody. Nor on the other hand, by the other hand, I do want to defend the cemetery. So I'm not sure what, here you are again. I'm uncertain about what to do. I really am. Ms. Priscilla Lee, do you want to say something?
I would. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Nancy Priscilla Lee. I live at 140 Walden Street in Concord, and I'm an art historian, and I've served on the Historic Districts Committee. And I want to say several things, and I also have some new information that I found about the history of this site that I think is really important and new. First of all, I want to say right off the bat, I don't know the owners, and this is not personal against them at all. I'm a property owner. I've done building work. We all have, and we all want to live in a house. So I just really want to make that clear. This is not personal. However, people who do buy properties in as historic a town as Concord, and I have done a lot of work on the Old Manse. I am forever, every day learning new things about Concord, and this is an extraordinary town. I've lived in Cambridge, England, which is a historic town. I'm from Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania, which is a historic town. So I am really keen on, educating people about history, because I think education is powerful, and it just benefits us all to know more about the place that we live, to appreciate it more. So first, I want to say that. And the second thing is, I want to respond to some comments made about the letter that I wrote. I too became aware of this issue only in early February. Someone told me about the fence, and I went and looked at it and was, really surprised. And so the letter that I wrote, I wrote it the night before. I practically stayed up the whole night writing it. So it's not a perfect letter. I'm not a specialist on the ZBA by any means. So I apologize for any mistakes that I made. I really do. And I didn't understand, for example, until I heard the ZBA hearing and understood the plans more, that behind the fence, I had described what was happening, what I thought might be happening behind that fence. And I didn't understand that a road had already been dug in. So I'm not, but I'm not going to apologize for the rest of my letter, which I still strongly believe in. As you've all been discussing, it's really unfortunate that this area, that the cemetery is not protected by the Historic Districts Commission. It's unfortunate, and perhaps now with this kind of issue, we should propose that to the town. And I think you're right. You are, as the committee members, responsible for caring for that cemetery, and that is the neighborhood. And the bylaws that address the application for the special permit, part of it, what the ZBA is responsible for voting on, is protecting the surroundings and the neighborhood, and that is the neighborhood, the abutting cemetery, and that's important. And so. The other thing is, I did not get confused between what the cemetery committee is and what the friends of the committee are. I definitely know the difference between them. And only just by talking to friends and people who are on different or who manage different historic estates in town, did I get a hold of some people who were members of that committee, but I spoke to them as individuals, not as members of the committees. But I think this kind of application falls through the cracks, because you're right, the owner has a lot of rights and he can do a lot of things. So it's really up to his conscience what he does. And I think that he is going to build there. And I disagree with a lot of things too. And I probably, as much as I would like to see him change his plans, I can't. But I think that, it's a lesson for us that the committees do need to work together. When I was on the Historic District Committee, I learned this too. The Historic Commission, the Historical Commission, the Cemetery Committee in this case, and the ZBA, everybody's a volunteer, so there's not enough time to share all this information. And there's really important information in the letters that have been submitted to the zoning board to this application. And if you go through them carefully, you'll notice that a lot of the neighbors are in support, but they just say, I'm in support of the applicant, but they give no reason. In other words, they don't address the historical issues. They don't address any of the bylaws that the zoning board are obligated to abide by. They're just, friends and neighbors, and they're being great neighbors. That's understandable. The people who do object or have concerns are people who really have experience in preservation. There's someone an award-winning couple who do preservation on cemeteries, the Fannons, I believe. I don't know them personally. And a couple of other letters that have been written. They're people who have spent lifetimes working on historic issues, and that's where I come from. Last time when I spoke at the ZBA, I had really done some research on the cemetery and the new burying ground portion. And I'm really sad to hear some of the expressions about the descriptions of that, because while it isn't along the busy road, you're absolutely right. I've been wandering around there since this issue has come up, and the busy road disappears. It is a sacred still, a very, very special part of the cemetery. It's the oldest part. It was started in 1823. In 2 years, it's going to celebrate its 200th anniversary. And I hope the cemetery committee is aware of that. I think that should be acknowledged. And I think it would be worth putting up some signage there to teach people more about the history so they appreciate that part of the cemetery more. The most interesting thing I found is that I went last at the ZBA committee, we all said, why is it called Windmill Hill? And we found out that in about 1835, Nathaniel Rice built a windmill at the top of that hill where I think the new house is proposed to be built. Although I found the windmill cited in 1830 on a map, the Hale map in the Shattuck book. So I'm not really sure that that 1835 date is correct. But in researching that, I found something that I think is even more significant. The windmill did not really function as it was supposed to. We were a rural community then. It was supposed to be a grain mill. And there's a quote that says that the blades sailed off towards Bedford. What's really interesting though, is that the base was an octagon. And even Mr. Everett's posted in his letter, he attached a wonderful, wonderful drawing of that windmill that I hadn't found even. And it says it's the Garrison House. Now, if any of you know who the Garrison family is, you would know that that's significant Black history in our town. The Garrison family lived in the Octagon in around 1837. They bought that, and it was significant because they became landowners, and they lived in the bottom half of the Octagon, and even they lived on the whole hill that fell apart, and then another house was moved to that site, and that burned down, and then finally later on they moved a little bit down the hill to the house that's still standing. But Susan Garrison was the only Black member, the only Black member of the Concord Ladies Anti-Slavery Society. When she was living in that house in 1837, she held a meeting for that committee. She invited all the women to tea in, I think, what is the octagon of that house. So if I were the owner of that property, I would be really privileged to know that and want to know that history. And your house, you might be building it right on the site of where that octagon was. And that is very important history of the Black community in our town, especially in this day and age. We know that everybody's focusing on this and we're trying to learn more, and it's just really interesting to know. And so,
okay, Ms. Roselli, I appreciate your.
Thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah. I wanted to let Mr. Ebert say something, but then I have a suggestion for us after Mr. Ebert speaks. Go ahead, Mr. Ebert.
I just wanted to point out that in the years that I've lived in Concord, I also have been involved in major historic restoration. We lifted the School of Philosophy off its foundation over at the Orchard House, rolled it out towards the street, installed a new foundation, put it back on. We went around the entire perimeter basement of the Orchard House itself and underpinned the foundation in order to make the basement 9 feet deep instead of a crawl space. We also renovated 204 Neshotic Road, which was the carriage house built by Harvey Wheeler up on Neshotic Road. We lifted it up in the air, built in an eyebrow window, and reshingled the roof and fixed the cupola. And I mean, I know all about historic restoration, and we have dealt with so much opposition at 204 Neshotic Road. And now a lot of people really like the house. So, I mean, this is all subjective conversation. The house is not in the historic district. The fence does not need a permit. We've been trying to work with you guys. I don't understand the opposition, knowing that any other developer could come in there and tear down the house and build a huge house up on top. So, it's very frustrating to listen to this stuff, I mean, we're not newcomers to restoration. We think we're doing, a bang it up job with a really good architect and a really good, landscape architect who's working over at Concord Academy. And, we're dealing with architects within the community to help us deal with the ADU. We're not the enemy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Everts. I
Thank you.
don't think you're the enemy either. I think in this case, you are doing the best you can. You've got your plan, you're defending it. And I'm doing the best I can with my responsibility to defend the cemetery. I still think your house is going to be too high and too big, even though if you don't like if the cemetery committee, if the zoning board nixes it and you say, well, okay, I'm just going to do it differently, we have nothing to say about it. I hope that in the meantime, if that should ever happen, and I hope it won't, the historic district might be formed around the cemetery to protect it from other developers who would build McMansions. So I don't know where the cemetery committee stands on the matter. And I think that they, at least that Jerry and Brian and Leo have been in some sense out of the loop because they just haven't. It's regrettable. So my proposal is that we have a special meeting in a week or 10 days to give everybody a chance to read all the relevant material. And then we come back and decide whether we want to essentially accept Mr. Everts' gifts and accept his plan, or and tell the zoning board that we do. Not that they're waiting, that they don't have to, they don't need us, but they've asked us essentially to weigh in. So one way, or we say we don't want you to give them a permit. That's our opinion. Now, if the committee feels we don't need a week, we already know what we want to do, then we can just do it now. But if you want to wait, we can. A week or 10 days. That I would think. Hold on just a second, Aaron. I don't want to keep Mr. Everts waiting. I know he's ready to go on this thing and he's frustrated. But Mr. Everts, you have to understand, we didn't hear about this till a week before our last meeting. We've known about this for about 6 weeks. That's all. And most of the guys don't know a thing about it. And I don't know if we're prepared to make a decision. So, Aaron, go ahead.
I would note that there's a zoning board meeting next week. And this, I believe the 18 Windmill Hill item is an agenda item up for discussion. And
all right.
I would also note that, I met with Mr. Everts yesterday at the property with Justin Richardson and, talked about the drainage and explained to him that there was going to be a meeting tonight. And he was very good to work with, and that he rushed those plans, the drainage plans, to engineering and to CPW today to get us that so we could provide comment to this committee for tonight's meeting to try to provide as much information as we could on this topic, so that hopefully there could be some type of a, if the committee felt they wanted to make a motion to take a vote to make a statement or a comment if you wish to do so. But I would, I just wanted to kind of state that there is a meeting for next month, or for next week for the ZBA.
What day do they meet next week, Aaron?
I believe it's the, Mr. Everts, do you know, is it the 11th or the 10th?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, today is the 3rd. Jerry.
Actually, Paul, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we convey to the Zoning Board of Appeals that we have no issue with the proposal.
All right.
I second that
I'm
motion.
not asking for additional second. Okay.
All right. So Jerry Susi has moved. The committee has, as a group, has no objection to Mr. Everts' plans. Is that correct, Jerry?
Yeah, that we convey that to the ZBA.
All right. Andrea, Solomon seconds that motion.
Yes.
All right. So let us poll the gang. Brian Davidson.
Just before I vote, I'll just say, Paul, I feel what you're saying about defending the cemetery. I think defending it's not necessarily banning or asking that the house not be approved. I think defending includes, listening to the plan to screen the house, to lower the house a little bit, which has been met. And so to me, I feel like we have met our burden by defending it, with the limited abilities we have to really have a say in this situation because we're not the ZBA. But I do feel we have defended it because we have asked Mr. Everett, and he has agreed to put in these mitigating circumstances to help mitigate the impact on the view. So I would say, sorry, I'm not sure if it's a yay or nay. I agree that we should send to the ZBA that we have no issue with the application.
Okay, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Leo.
Well, let me make sure I got this on here. Yeah. This is reminiscent of something that's happened that strikes home to me, and that's in back of my house, which is across from the Pickard Gate. There was a forest, and a developer came in, and he had a plan for, I believe it was 5 super mansions. It was going to be like the Great Gatsby type of environment. And the town went around and around on this for months and months and months. And in the end, the developer became frustrated to the point where he just said, okay, I will go with the rules. And now instead of having 5 houses in the woods back there, the woods has been eliminated and there's 20 houses. It's very similar to a tract of land, a development you see in California or anywhere else. So I think Mr. Everett is doing a lot, and I believe that if you've got to put yourself in his position, if you keep pushing back and pushing back, at some point he's going to have to say, I gotta do something here, folks. And I think that what he has proposed, and if the roof line is going to come down at all and minimize the visual impact, I think it's the lesser of 2 evils myself. That's my opinion. And so I would say that, I'd like to say that he's going along with the zoning board of appeals and building requirements. There's nothing we can do about it.
Thank you, Leo.
Leo, I just need, how do you vote on the motion in the second?
Oh, is there a maybe slot? No, I vote that we go with the motion.
All right, so I rejoice in the fact that we've aired this more thoroughly. I feel better about that. It didn't happen too quickly. I am opposed to Jerry's motion, so I vote no. But I don't mind being on the losing side, and I'm glad we had a good argument about it. And so I think we have resolved the issue, have we not?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry that I couldn't get everybody to come along. But I don't think you'll be disappointed at the end of the day.
All right, this is not the, yes, Aaron.
I just for a full roll call vote, we need Andrea and Jerry to also vote.
Okay, sorry, Andrea.
I agree with Jerry's motion.
Jerry.
Yeah, vote aye.
Okay, all right, Aaron, there you go. Now
I'd be happy to write the letter unless Jerry, you wanted to write it and then have the committee review it and send it before the next meeting of the zoning board.
I think it would be whoever wants to write it, but I don't even know if a letter is necessary, is it? We've had the vote.
I think we.
What's that, Aaron?
Yeah, the motion was to convey to the ZBA that we have no issue.
All right. So Andrew, you want to convey to the ZBA?
Sure. I will put it out there for you guys to approve it first, or edit it or change wording, whatever. But it will just mirror what we've discussed here and what we've decided.
Yeah. Now, as far as whatever goes on out there after this, I would like to ask Leo to be present because he is our woodsman, our naturalist. Whatever you and Aaron and Tish do, I would like to ask you to be there with Mr. Everett, okay? Would you be willing to do that?
Which night is it?
Whenever, if there's any discussion to be made about what to plant and where to plant it and all that sort of thing.
Okay.
I would like to ask you to be there because I think you're the guy who knows the most about the subject.
Sure.
Can I make one little point? We are going to be irrigating along the fence to make sure that whatever we plant along the fence is, going to make it. So whatever trees we do plant, I'm more than happy to provide irrigation down to it, if that's helpful to you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Eberts.
Thank you.
All right, is there anything else on the matter before we go on to D4? Anything else, anyone? Thank you all for participating in this. And let's go on to the next topic, D4, lot transfer request, Cunahan Weiss.
Okay, back in 1976, Geneva Cunahan purchased a single grave lot, but it was actually paid for by Robert Morgan. The Morgans had lived in Concord, but had recently moved away. Their son died and they wanted to bury him in Concord, but were not eligible at the time because they were no longer residents. So their friend Geneva Cunahan purchased it for them. She at this point, and now because former residents are able to be owners, she at this point, just to kind of clean things up, the current generations don't necessarily know each other, so it's easier, wants to transfer ownership of this lot to technically Georgia Weiss, the daughter of Dorothea and Robert Morgan, sister of the person who is interred there.
Tish, do you have any objection?
No, it's actually a good thing.
Questions of Tish? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I motion accept the request. Yeah.
Leo.
I second.
Leo Carroll motions to accept it. Andrea Solomon seconds it. Let's have a roll call. I vote yay. Andrea?
Yay.
Jerry?
Yay.
Leo?
Yay.
Brian?
Yay.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Tish. D5, update on the committee's priority projects. Mausoleum lots. I want to show my article. We got in the newspaper. After 5 years, we got 5 new mausoleum sites. Only question is, Aaron, just the actual, I guess you're waiting for the snow to be gone before you can lay out those lots. Okay, very good. Let's go on to the record scanning. How's that going?
Going, they're scanning away now. Everything's scanned up. They're just working on finalizing the kind of the online. It's gonna, we expect it to take another month or two for them to finish digitizing and converting everything over to the online format, and hopefully soon enough we'll make it available to the public.
Wonderful. Headstone restoration.
Working on finalizing. We have a list. We're going to be reaching out to vendors this month and start soliciting prices so we can get some restoration completed in the spring and summertime of 2021.
Some of those stones are up there near where Mr. Ebert's place is that right?
Correct. Yeah, they're all throughout the cemetery.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. D6, master plan. Continued discussion. Tree planting plan with Leo.
Yeah, it's more than tree planting. I don't know whether that's the right title for it or not, but it's to stop the erosion that's taking place and the deterioration of this topsoil. And so what I did is I wrote an email to Aaron and asked if I could talk to the people at the University of Massachusetts Extension Service. They have we send soil samples to them every year from the playgrounds and different other places in town, parks. So, it'd be appropriate to do that with the cemetery, I believe. But more than that, I wanted to find out if there's a way that we can get some advice from this extension service without having to pay for it. I often hear, well, we can't afford to do this. If we can get it for free, then we should go looking for it. Now, I think they will be able to advise us on the type of trees to plant and also the type of ground cover that needs to be put in to stop this erosion. And Aaron is gonna get back with me on that. I understand why he didn't got tied up this week with all of this that's going on, but that's the direction I'm trying to move in, is to get some advice from knowledgeable people on what we can do about this erosion problem and the tree plantings. So that's where we stand. I'm waiting for Aaron to get back to me so I can contact this person at the University of Massachusetts Extension Service.
Leo, what do you need from Aaron to enable you to do that?
Well, who the person is? We have a mechanism right now to send our stuff in. Even that person, if I could just contact them, they'd be able to direct me to whoever deploys the personnel to come out and work with entities like ours.
Yeah.
And so I want, it's always good to have somebody on the inside giving you the information on how these things work. So that's what I was hoping for.
Leo, I think we'll loop you in. I mean, we look at turf and soil conditions and, our turf management program throughout the town, every season. So that's something that I think you met Eric Shaw before. He was at a previous meeting a few months back. He kind of heads up our turf management. And so we'll loop you in and get a meeting with, I think, the three of us as a starting point sometime in March. When we start looking at what areas are we going to sample to determine what our maintenance, what type of maintenance are we going to apply to the different fields, and then we can apply that to look at the cemetery as well. So I'll try to schedule in with you for a meeting, either Zoom or most likely three of us sometime this month. That works. We haven't really shifted into spring maintenance mode. We've still been in winter maintenance. A lot of snow in February, so that's going to ruin our focus. But in March, we're going to be shifting over. So we don't have a direct contact, if you will, as a soil person at UMass Extension. We send samples in, but we can try to reach out and find who the appropriate person would be, or we can work with our staff up there on this one as well.
Yeah. And that it's I think it's a question of finding out the type of ground cover to put on, then just going after it. And that raises another issue that's probably worth discussion. And that is that if it's going to be too expensive to try to rebuild that topsoil with the cost to the town, perhaps we could do it through volunteers and just go to the town landfill and get some of that compost and get a group together and start doing it ourselves. I think more community involvement in this might be the solution to getting around the cost problems. So those are my thoughts on the what we call a tree planting. And I guess what we're going to do then is, my understanding, we'll have a call next week and see if we can come up with some type of ideas on which areas to start working on and what we're going to do about it.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you got an idea where you want to go. That's the best way to get somewhere, is to have a goal, and you've got one. So good. Aaron, what's the name of the fellow that you want to get with Leo? You said you want to sit down with somebody with Leo. Who's that?
Eric Shaw. He's the assistant.
Okay, Eric Shaw. Right. Very good. Thank you, Leo. The columbarium with Andrea and Jerry. Anything to report?
Jerry, do you want to take this one since I've spoken a lot?
Sure. Yeah. So we met at the site and we surveyed the site. We kind of talked about some design elements. Really, it is a gorgeous site. And we talked about getting some input from this vendor who volunteered to give us some help a while ago. So we'd like to kind of do that as the next step.
Yeah. I would only say that there are quite a few vendors out there. It would be good to get at least one other person's point of view.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Well, I think there was in the past a question came up about funding that, so we know one vendor, and Tish, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the Hardy Doric Vault Company, had years ago volunteered to give a design and possibly give us some idea of the cost. If there were others out there, yeah, we could definitely do that. But Jerry and I were wondering if that phone call should come from one of us, or maybe it's best from Tish, since she's actually going to be the one, Tish or Aaron, like after I'm not on the committee and Jerry someday won't be on the committee, they will continue to work with whoever these people are that are building this vault. So maybe that call should come from Aaron or Tish. I'm not sure.
I agree. I think it should come from, like an employee, a department member, so either Tish or I.
When I was doing research, I came across a Canadian outfit who has offices in Boston, and they were willing to, you know, like so many guys, free estimate. We'll come out and give you the columbarium folks are do the same way, and they sent me all kind of interesting stuff. So yeah, it would be worth calling a couple of people and have them come out and give you the, you know, here's my Chevy and here's my Ford or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think the other piece of it too is just trying to get a handle on what's the scope of this project. You know, is this a $50,000, $100,000, a $200,000 capital project? You know, we just have we need to kind of get a better understanding on what the scope and scale is.
So what do you propose to do next, Jerry and Andrea?
Well, I think next we should probably get those estimates. So and then
Or meet with some vendors and get some industry input, you know. I mean, we can do all the research we want.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I mean, there's time, and Jerry has done a ton of research on these vaults and how they're built and how they can be put in, and but you know, until there's like, it gets to the point where we kind of specifically know what we want to do just based on past conversations with the committee and with Tish. And so, you know, maybe we can build off that in terms of working with a vendor about getting estimates.
Yeah.
And then also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's a larger matter than the units themselves. It's the units within the setting, and it's also maximizing the setting. Because when you think about, you know, someone going to a columbarium, I mean, they would go there for a couple of reasons. One, they would go there to inter the ashes. And I've seen a few YouTube videos where that's, in some ways, some places it's kind of ceremonial, in some places it's just like, you know, the guy comes with the tools and gets things set in. It's not very glamorous, but you know, you would go there to either put cremains in, or you'd go there to just be with them. And so, you know, would like to have that be a more aesthetic experience than looking at a bank of niches and stuff. And it, again, the site itself really lends itself to a lot of possibilities. And I guess the other question in my mind is, if we're looking at, we do have a budget for getting some landscape design, you know, or overall design. I'm unclear as to what the process is for, you know, finding designers or putting out the word and that sort of stuff. So that's also kind of a near-term step as well.
Thank you, Jerry. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Andrea and Jerry on all this? All right, so you guys are going to talk to Aaron and Tish about contacting some vendors and getting some idea about how much this is going to cost, something like that. Okay, great. That's wonderful. All right, thank you. Let's go on to underdeveloped land use plan. Brian Davidson, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I tried to put together a quick little presentation. I'm terrible with this stuff, so I don't know, Justine, can you share your screen, or if we can't, well, we can just move along to it.
I'm going to give it a try. So
yeah. Oh, I'm horrible at this stuff.
What do you see?
We see the PowerPoint presentation.
Excellent, perfect.
Yeah. So I just kind of named this Where the Grass Ends, thinking about the unincorporated cemetery land. So maybe the next slide there, Justine. So this is kind of just, you know, the project goal would just kind of define the area and its unique characteristics, establish that this parcel of town land comes under the jurisdiction of the cemetery committee, because actually some committees have a question about that. And that the cemetery committee should be a leading voice in making management recommendations to the town, to create a vision for this section instead of selection, but identify potential challenges and concerns. And then ultimately what the project is just to add to the master plan a section for the unincorporated land planning, both short-term and long-term goals. So if we could just go to the next slide. So just to kind of give a little view of kind of how I'm viewing this unincorporated section. So obviously it's where we don't mow. On the right side by the knoll area is the woods. I've kind of just dubbed that the knoll woods. 2 is the wetlands area, which is the Morris Swamp. 3 is the trail that goes around the base of Arthur's Ridge. And 4 is what I just calling the Reformatory Branch Trail Connector. So those dotted lines kind of going through that area are some of the current trails that are in place. And like I say, the wetlands area, which is most of the space, is highlighted. So if we could just go maybe to the next slide and then the next slide after that, yeah. So some of the committees, so for instance, like the Trails Committee had some kind of bit of a question of, do they have a right because they have trails going through that area. So I just wanted, just for the record, just kind of establish, what I think we have the jurisdiction over this. And one is the town GIS mapping identifies the area of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery and this specific area that we just talked about as one parcel. Historical maps identify this area as part of the cemetery, including when these different lots were purchased, it was all for the cemetery use. And our charge in 1983, the administrative code for the cemetery committee, its duties and responsibilities, items 2 is, basically kind of gives us the care and management of the public burial grounds, proper paths and ways we're allowed to set out, plantings, fencings, and the improvements to the area. We have a long history of the cemetery use in this area. So roads used to cross the area in the past, or were planned to connect the knoll to Sleepy Hollow. Tish let me know that she was used to be able to drive a truck over through Moore's Swamp at one time before the beavers kicked in that area. And prior cemetery committees have been very active in the space, most notably like our boardwalk construction, attempts to make Cat Pond restoration attempts. And Cat Pond itself was once, considered one of the original features of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. But we do have partners, mainly the NRC and its trail subcommittee, that also have some connection to this particular area.
Brian, you're referring to a few years ago, we were investigating putting a boardwalk in there, or is there something else?
Yeah, no, right. That we were investigating putting a boardwalk, but just to show that prior committees have considered that area.
Right.
So, if the trail committee says, well, this is a trail area, we can say, well, no, this is, really, we should be taking the lead in this particular area when we're setting things up. So, but of course, we're partners with them and the NRC in this particular area. For instance, they helped build the bridge and the culvert when beavers were creating, more swamp into Moore's Pond at one time, and there was the rookery there for the great herons, but as they've adjusted some of the water flow, of course, Moore's Swamp has returned a little bit to more walkable condition. But this area is important to Sleepy Hollow. So it, obviously it's a, place of nature, garden, which is, the whole purpose of kind of the Sleepy Hollow. The habitat for birds, animals, fauna. It provides a space for mourners and others to reflect. Knoll Woods is kind of deemed as potential for cemetery expansion, and it acts as a buffer to the activity on the Reformatory Branch Trail. Our current master plan has a few references to this area, but probably maybe improve a little bit on them. But, specifically in the supply section, speaking of the Knoll Woods, 60+ year availability. And then in the infrastructure section, 3.1, 3.3, 3.8 talks about signage and maps, which of course we've been very active on. Talks a little bit about landscaping, Cat Pond, and the drainage improvements. Specifically, there's down by Chestnut Hollow, there's kind of a drainage system that stops short of going to the pond and causing some rutting in the trail there. And just basically the drainage system with stormwater into Cat Pond. So I'll just go to the next slide. And so it's the Reformatory Branch Trail update, which is the most important kind of section of all this. So there's been a lot of discussion about that of late. So our transportation committee was established, which we kind of talked a little bit before. The bicycle subcommittee, I believe, had their first meeting today, which is a subcommittee of the transportation committee. And we're lucky because Aaron sits on both of these committees. And so we have a kind of a voice already on these committees, which is great. And so talking about the reformatory branch, a lot of things have come up, but there was a 1995 Bicycle Ways Task Force that reviewed this trail specifically and suggested that it remain a multi-use trail and unpaved. However, it looks like it's coming back up for discussion. The Bruce Freeman Trail people have sent a letter to the selectmen stating that they are willing to lead on a review of the reformatory branch trail. There's been, a little controversy with that. Some of those members attended a Bedford bike trail committee meeting, and which is on YouTube, and there was a lot of suggestion by those individuals that they wish to pave it. But of course, it's very early in this discussion. There's lots of groups that are weighing in on the conversation about the reformatory branch trail. And so, it remains a very active issue, and we'll continue to kind of to view that. So I think our next steps is just to continue to review the appropriate signage in the cemetery, monitor the reformatory branch trail news. And in our next meetings, I'd just like to bring up those sub areas that we kind of talked about in the beginning, and talk with the group about any ideas about what we feel, if there's anything that should be done in those areas. And perhaps we just say, nope, they're just great just the way they are as of right now, but also look for ways to potentially improve. And when we have that list of improvements, to update the cemetery master plan. So that's it for me.
Brian, does anybody have any questions for Brian? Brian, you have done it. Oh, go ahead, Susan.
I just wanted to ask, and maybe it's for Justine or Aaron, if we could get a copy. I thought that was a very good presentation and comprehensive. I think you did a great job, but I'd like to actually be able to get a copy of it, and that's what I wanted to find out, how to do that.
I can post a copy of that on the cemetery website, along with the meeting minutes and agenda.
Great, thank you.
The only thing I would ask that be amended on there, just because we're not connecting the knoll to Sleepy Hollow. The knoll is just the newest section of Sleepy Hollow.
Yes. Right.
It's been a battle I've been fighting since 1998.
You're pretty tenacious on this one, Tish.
Have to be, Paul.
We'll amend that, but it was a one-time sit, right?
It's okay. I'll let it slide. But if we're gonna put something out in the public, let's all be on the same page.
Absolutely. I have to make a few edits there too, because as I was going through, I saw a few wrong words, but put it quickly. But anyway, so we're just kind of getting this going. But I just wanted to kind of just summarize kind of where we're thinking we could head with it. And again, just at the end of the day, updating the master plan and keeping an eye on the reformatory branch expansion, as that would potentially bring a lot more people, especially bicyclists, into the area.
Yeah, Brian,
I just had a quick question. I wondered, Brian, if attending the different or keeping up with the different trail committees and the bike committee and everything, I think from what I understand that the Bruce Freeman Trail going through Bedford, Bedford wants to pave that trail. And I think their funding is actually tied to whether or not Concord decides to continue to pave that trail through Concord, which would then mean paving the reformatory branch trail. Did you see anything about that? Do you have any details about that?
Yeah, so I will say I'm not an expert and easily could be wrong. My understanding is that at Bedford's town meeting, representations were made that Concord was going to pave if Bedford paved to its border. That was my understanding. I could have that wrong. I will say that there's, as part of the selectmen meetings, there was a YouTube a citizen had sent in a letter and provided a YouTube video of that Bedford meeting, which had Concord, I'll say Concord citizens. I don't believe they were representing necessarily any specific committee, but they are now members of committees. But so it was a very insightful discussion. And so that was my understanding, Andrea, but I certainly, others are probably closer to it and have a better understanding.
I was just curious, there's so many committees. So it's very hard to sort out what exact, oh, Susan, do you have an answer to that?
Well, partial. I also understood it, and I think it was from one of these sources, like that meeting or something, that the end of the last, I don't know, 90 feet or 100 feet, some portion of Bedford, they don't have funding. That's not good, that they have to acquire funding for that. I wasn't aware, and if it was represented at the meeting that Concord was going to do that, that's not at all, that's a misrepresentation at best, because as I've mentioned before, this process hasn't really started, and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail has communicated that they're kind of backing off on that. But they would support whatever, or they would like to be involved, but they're not pushing the idea that they assume this official responsibility for the reformatory branch. So.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thanks.
Brian, I'm very happy that you are sort of watching over this issue of the Bruce Freeman Trail. Along with all the other things and I appreciate very much the detail and the effort that you put into that presentation and looking out for that. I think it's a good idea to put it in the master plan. There's room in there for that.
It's a great plan.
Andrea's had a big stake in that. All right. And by the way, they called for an annual revision or annual visiting of it, which I think that's why we're doing this D6 thing. Is it just all these are just touching on the things that we've picked recently to dwell on. But the source of this list is really the master plan. So, okay, repair. One other thing I wanted to ask Aaron, we talked about signage, some signs about, what's the status of those signs we were going to make to post?
They'll be manufactured and then installed sometime in the spring.
Okay. And what are the signs going to say?
Something along the lines of, be respectful, active cemetery. I haven't finalized the language of it, but I will share that with the committee once that's
okay. Very good.
At the trailhead entrances to the cemetery, both sides, just a reminder to all users of the trail that it's an active cemetery, and please be respectful of any funerals that might be in.
Aaron, could you be the lead guy on working with Aaron on? Brian, could you be the lead guy on working with Aaron on the language of the signs?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you guys just present it to us. And okay. Finally, the repair and restoration of cemetery stone walls. That's Leo.
Yeah, I'll just repeat what we talked about last time, and that we've got money to do this. There's, I believe, $10,000, and in the spring, Aaron is going to have someone come in and repair that wall between the Pickard Gate entrance and the the vault off to the right when you get up to the top of that little knoll. So that's my understanding, that in the spring that work will be done, and it's just patching up where the splits are and things of that nature, replacing some of the rocks.
Leo,
can I clarify one point, Paul?
Go ahead, Aaron.
So we don't have funding available in this fiscal year budget. There'll be funding available in next year's fiscal year budget if the budget is funded as requested by the department.
So you can't do anything till next year?
Correct. Like no major repairs. I think we talked about at a previous meeting, there's going to be maybe $10,000 allocated towards stone wall restoration in next year's budget. This year's budget went towards tree maintenance towards headstone restoration that is to be completed this spring, and to the document scanning project.
So it's not going to be done this year then?
We
Is that what
talked,
you're
we talked about doing some type of an assessment with engineering to come in and look at all the stone walls this year. Next fiscal year starts in, July 1st is next fiscal year. So you could, if the budget is funded as requested, we could potentially do some stone wall work this summer and fall.
Okay.
Okay, so this July, we have the new budget and you can start the work on, so it will be done this summer.
If the budget is funded as requested.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought, yeah,
That's good news.
yeah.
Leo, is that where there's some initial in some of the mortar or something you showed me once? Your initials are in the mortar somewhere?
No, my uncle actually built that, and he just put the date that it was done. It was 1958, and he just wrote that in. Yes, and it's not a huge job, but if you don't keep these up, then it turns into a much bigger job. So that's what we got to do, is keep fixing these guys.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're pushing that for that, Leo. All right, I think we have done. Now it's time. The mausoleum sites in the new area. We just mentioned that before. I wanted to know, Justine, or maybe this would go to Anna Trout, Aaron, putting this article, which was in the February 11th, 2021. Could this article be put on Cemetery in the News? It's in the Concord Journal, probably online, or if we could put that on our website there's a section called Cemeteries in the News.
I'll reach out to Anna.
Thank you so much, Justine. I appreciate that. All right, committee comments.
I'd like to make a comment and perhaps ask a question, and that is that when I was at the attending the Friends of Sleepy Hollow meeting, they're looking for projects to come up with, and one of the things they had talked about was getting permanent steel or iron bollards into the ground in front of the Melvin Memorial. Right now we've got those plastic ones, and they get knocked down and such, and they just don't really look good in front of that beautiful monument. But so I said I'd bring it up with the committee here, but I got to thinking, when I was growing up, it was like you could always just go up there and read the inscriptions on that thing. And, I think that was the intent of the Mr. James Melvin, who actually was a patron and the funder of that. And so I did a little research, and here's a great book here. It's Daniel Chester French. It talks about the work he's done. And so I started looking at the Melvin Memorial, and what happened is they had done a clay model. Daniel Chester French did a clay model, and he and the architect, Henry Bacon, didn't include steps to get up to it, and didn't include the seats on the monument. So that was rejected by Mr. James Melvin. He said he was looking for a place to contemplate the consequences of war. And so the final result ended up being different in the included things to make it more comfortable for people to go there. And so one of the things that I've got is the Melvin Memorial, the exercise at the dedication in 1909. And what it talks about is the, he's talking about the monument. At either end, a seat and steps extending entirely across the front to afford access to the platform, which is, by the way, made out of very hard, it's called Knoxville marble, so it's not like it's going to get worn down. It's the same thing that's in the floor of the Lincoln Memorial. So my question is there do we have something that the committee voted on about putting up the the bollards in front of the memorial? And if so, then we should rescind that. And if not, I'd like to request we just take them down.
Thank you, Leo. That's very interesting what you found there. Any thoughts on what Leo has just said?
Collards were put there because the slates were the things getting damaged. People were stepping on them and scratching them with their feet. That wasn't a consequence that they had considered. The original design also didn't have slates in it. It wasn't going to be for three brothers. It was just going to have a flat marble floor long ago. And in that book, they may be incorporated, but the slate itself doesn't hold up well to foot traffic, especially with the letters now being raised. They've been replaced twice now.
Suggestions? Tish? Leo?
Well, all I know is that, for like 110 years, it was open to the public and now it's closed. It
Because it
doesn't
was
seem
getting
right to me.
damaged.
Could you place a very low sort of ornamental thing just around the slate part so people could go sit at the seats?
I wouldn't put anything on the marble, no. The slate, the seats were actually damaged as well. If you remember, Leo, I mean, I'm sure we have pictures of it, but where the marble was eroding. All things that had to be repaired. And we didn't want people touching it. That's why they were put there.
So Tish,
Yeah, it's interesting. I understand what you're saying, but I remember always being there as a kid and getting the feeling of what I believe Mr. Melville wanted people to feel. And just a couple of years ago, I had an interesting experience over there. It was a young guy, and he was there with his mother and father. He was probably in his 20s. Well, he tells me he's in the army. He's going off to Afghanistan. And he's looking at things. He says, I sure would like to be able to go up there and read what that says. And it's a tragedy that this beautiful monument with that powerful message in it isn't able to be read by people. I don't think that's what the James Melville wanted.
Tish, what do you say to that?
We just put them there because the slates were getting damaged. That's why we put them there.
I suppose we could say, well, look, so we replace the slates every 50 years,
I mean, I think that also like the idea of having the slates there is almost like I know that there's no bodies interred in there, but it almost represents that as a feel.
Aaron, can't hear you very well, Aaron.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure can.
Okay. I mean, I think that this, I mean, I could be wrong. I wasn't here when the slates were put in, but I think the slates represent, almost, I know there's nobody interred in that monument. The slates almost, they look as almost like a representing a tomb of a soldier, right? And I don't know if that's something you want to encourage foot traffic upon. And also, I think the bollards are there not only to keep, people from necessarily walking and maybe damaging the monument, but also like there's a lot of motor vehicle traffic that is in that cemetery now. I'm sure much more than was obviously when the memorial went in.
Yeah.
Those bollards also, we do have issues with people and damage from motor vehicles in the cemetery, driving over graves that aren't even, that are farther away from the road than that memorial is. And I think while those bollards are just plastic bollards with a plastic chain, it is some type of a visual reference to keep motor vehicles, a clear distance away from that. That being said, they are just a bollard and a chain, and if somebody wanted to, get close enough to read the inscription, there's nobody there stopping them from doing that. But I don't know.
But there was a plan when we did the restoration 2 years ago. There was a plan to put some, I'll say permanent, something more sturdy so that if a car did hit it, it would stop the car. But they were going to be removable so that we could take them down if there was events or if somebody needed to take a photograph of it without bollards in front of it. I'd still have all of those, I'm sure.
Yeah,
all of that information.
We do have that, and we do have funding for some additional installations there. Those, maybe with chain or without chain, that for me, I'd say that the concern is more having the balls there to protect them from a motor vehicle accident, something happened. There's not unlimited funds for maintenance. Obviously, we're discussing here, maintenance of stone walls. It's not available that needed, and other items as well. And what we don't want to do is see any unnecessary damage or accelerated deterioration of such a nice monument that was just restored. So, from an operational standpoint, I would say we probably should have something in front of the memorial. Obviously, that's just strictly that. So,
People still do. I find flowers up there. I find notes up there. People still do access it. It doesn't keep everybody off, but it keeps the masses off, which, I mean, I've come around the corner and found a whole class of school children climbing up the walls, sitting up by the monument. I've had to stop and say, you need to come down.
Yeah.
So that's happened. I think 110 years ago, they weren't that interested in conserving these things. They just kind of thought they'd be around forever. And we have found that they're not, and that we need to put some effort into maintaining them.
Yeah, I think maybe a solution could be to put a couple of bollards in the front if we're afraid about cars hitting it, and have the same type that we've got on the hill going up right near it. We just screw them into a pretty strong base, and then maybe a sign that says, "Please do not step on the the things with the rifles on." But I just think it's important that people be able to read what the inscriptions are. It's pretty powerful stuff. And I think that's what he wanted. I think that's what James wanted when he funded this thing.
Leo, what if the Friends, they already put one sign up with text on it. What if a new sign, instead of paying for permanent bollards, if the Friends created another sign that had the text of on the monument written on the sign? Is that a thought?
That's the thought. Maybe we get a spotting scope there too. I don't think that's what the guy wanted.
Yeah.
I think he designed this so that people would contemplate the consequences of war. And you know what? If there's a couple of spots where people wore the seats down a little bit, I think that's a great thing. I think it's a good thing. It's accomplishing the goal that the man wanted.
If the bollards were there with no sign, doesn't that sort of, if you really want to get up there, you can just step over it and go. That's what I think Tish is saying. If you really want to, you can. So it's just there as a reminder, because they're not very substantial, to respect this. Will that accomplish what you have in mind?
I think so. I think you obviously don't want people destroying it. That's obvious. So keep the cars out. We put just a couple of bollards that screw in and are sturdy, but maybe a note that says, "Do not step on the actual stones with the muskets on them." But the thing about this is we've got one of the most beautiful monuments in this country. It's a priceless object of art. And then we got these plastic things willy-nilly all over the place. I mean, to me, it's like putting a tattoo on your grandmother. It's just, it's offensive. I don't like it at all.
So the Friends suggested that they put some more permanent bollards in place, or was it your idea?
No, they suggested, they were looking for projects to fund. And that was one of the things they said. One of the members said that the bollards really didn't look good, and they were, on a strong wind, they get knocked over and they come along and then it goes down. There's a sign that says, "Please respect our restoration project." Well, the restoration was done 2 years ago. So it seems to me that at least that should be taken away.
So Leo,
I hear you on that, Leo, and as I stated before, I think we do have money, we just haven't gotten there yet. So I think the plan is to install some removable bollards in front of it. I don't think we don't have a plan to install a sign that says "Keep off the monument," but the bollards mainly protection of the monument from motor vehicle traffic is, I think, the primary concern.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to encourage. I would, I'll tread lightly on the topic of, no pun intended, but not encouraging folks to walk on the monument, but nobody's there to stop them from approaching it closely to read the inscription. I don't think we're trying to we understand that the cemetery is a point of interest for the town and, a place of historical significance for the town. And we want to encourage people to come and enjoy the cemetery and the monuments that are there. So, but also we have to be cognizant of, the maintenance needs and making sure that we're able to maintain those to the highest levels possible.
So
And the plan is to install removable bollards in front of the monument.
Okay, so the town will do that, and I can report back to the Friends of Sleepy Hollow that the town will put, a couple of bollards, the screw type bollards in front of it to protect it from getting hit by cars.
Yes.
Okay,
well, the funds come from the cemetery funds, Aaron?
There's an account, there's a gift account for the Melvin that has money in it to fund the installation of these.
Which reminds me that I think the gentleman who did the restoration said he would come back and do a once over or a year or two later. Is my memory correct on that, Tish?
Josh from Daedalus, yeah.
Did we let them know? I mean, how long has it been? It's been a couple of years. It's June.
Try to come last year and things got kind of screwy, so it wasn't, but he's planning to this spring.
Okay, great. So would it be sensible to let the Friends fund this and save the funds for the Melvin for people like Daedalus?
If Jerry wants to, or excuse me, if Leo wants to start a conversation, I don't want to speak for anybody, but if Jerry wants to follow up with the Friends and let us know, then we'll stand by.
Well, Leo, they're looking for a project to fund, right?
that's correct, yeah. And they were having a discussion on it, and my comment is why is it even there? It wasn't there for 110 years, 105 years, so why do we need it now? And I said I'd bring it up with the committee and we'll see see what the thoughts are on this. So I hear what you're saying, but it might be better to let the Friends fund the installation of the bollards. And that might be a better suggestion. So why don't I bring that up at the next meeting that we discuss this, and if they're interested in funding that, we're all for
it. Anybody, Brian or Jerry or Andrea, anything on this? All right, well, it looks like you've got a green light to go ahead and Leo and talk to the folks at the Friends.
Okay.
They appreciate you being the liaison.
I guess, I don't know.
And I think we do too.
Well,
we went to, I think Tish and Aaron, have we gone together to sit to one of their meetings? I know that I went with Tish once.
And I have not attended, no.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So any other committee I have one request. I sent everyone the final version of the history of the cemetery committee from 1855 to 1864. Tish gave me some edits for that, and I followed her directions almost completely. And I wondered if we could post that on our cemetery committee website. Justine, could you ask Anna to put that up there?
Absolutely. Can someone forward me the document?
I think Aaron has it. Aaron, I said,
Okay.
and ultimately, I'd also like to add it as an appendix to the master plan. I think that was our original intention.
I say it looks great, Paul. It's a really nice update. Yeah, thanks for all that work. It was really interesting to read through, and Tish, you had a lot of great info there.
Tish did the real work. I just sort of put it together. All right, so I think we're done. Summary of follow-up items. I think we went over that pretty well. Can anyone want to help remind me what they are? Let's see. I have it all here. I think we've been here too long. I think everybody wants to go home. I can figure it out. All right. So unless anybody wants to say anything. All right. So thank you, every one of you, for being willing to stay 2 hours and 20 minutes. Thanks for your cooperation. And do I have a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Jerry Susi motions we adjourn, and Leo
Okay,
Carroll seconds it. Let's do our roll call. I say aye. Andrea,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Leo,
aye.
Brian.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Justine, for sitting through this. Aaron, thank you again for being with us. Tish, good to see you as always. See you next month, God willing.
Later.
The creek don't rise.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thanks,
care, y'all
Justine.
down there in Texas, Paul.
Aye.